We can't cure cancer. Not next year, not in a decade, and probably not in your lifetime. And before you assume that's a failure of funding or effort, it isn't. In 1971, Richard Nixon signed the National Cancer Act and framed it exactly like the space race. Throw enough money and enough scientists at a problem, and it surrenders. We just put a man on the moon. Surely a disease was easier. 55 years and roughly 200 billion public dollars later, cancer still kills about 10 million people a year worldwide. It's the second leading cause of death on the planet. So what happened? Was the science bad? Were the researchers asleep? Or is cancer something the throw resources at it playbook was never built to solve? It's the third one. And once you understand why, you'll never hear the phrase cure for cancer the same way again.
Start with the word cancer. Singular. Like it's one disease. It isn't. It's an umbrella over roughly 200 biologically distinct diseases that share exactly one trait. Cells dividing when they shouldn't. Take breast cancer, the one everyone thinks they understand. Underneath that single label are at least 4 molecularly different diseases. Luminal A, luminal B, HER2 positive, triple negative, each with different drivers, different prognoses, and different drugs that work on one and do nothing for another. A therapy that saves the woman in one hospital bed can be completely useless for the woman in the next one. Not because the medicine failed, because she never had the same disease to begin with. We named cancers by where doctors in the 1800s could see them. Lung, breast, pancreas, because that's all a microscope of the era could show. Modern genomic sequencing tells a stranger story. A lung tumor with one mutation profile might respond to a melanoma drug, while 2 lung cancers in neighboring beds need completely different chemotherapies. The map was wrong from the start. We just didn't.
Here's the part that actually reframes everything. In 1976, pathologist Peter Noel published a paper most people have never heard of that quietly rewrote cancer biology. Tumors aren't a static clump of bad cells. They're a population, a small ecosystem. And ecosystems evolve. It starts with one cell that picks up the wrong mutations and starts dividing without permission. Its daughter cells pick up new mutations of their own. Some grow faster and outcompete their neighbors. Some learn to dodge the immune system. Within months, what looks like a single mass under a microscope is actually a forest of genetically distinct cell lines, each holding a slightly different hand. Now bring in chemotherapy. Mechanically, chemo is a selection pressure. Kill 99% of the tumor, and you've just handed the surviving 1%, the ones that happen to carry resistance, the entire ecosystem to themselves, with no competition left. They're not damaged. They're selected. The tumor that comes back isn't the one you treated. It's that tumor's descendant, and it inherited exactly the traits it needed to survive the last attack. Darwin would recognize. Here's the part oncologists don't say bluntly enough. Cancer isn't a malfunction. It's a statistical certainty. Your body holds around 37 trillion cells. Most divide constantly. Skin, gut lining, blood. Every division copies about 3 billion base pairs of DNA. And even with an error rate of roughly 1 mistake per billion bases, multiply that across trillions of divisions over decades, and the number of mutations your body racks up by age 60 runs into the quadrillions. Most are harmless. Occasionally, the wrong one lands in the wrong gene in the wrong cell, and that cell becomes cancer. This is why cancer risk climbs almost exponentially with age. It's not bad luck. It's
Here's the wall modern medicine still hasn't cracked. Roughly 90% of cancer deaths aren't caused by the original tumor. They're caused by metastasis. Cells break off, travel through blood or lymph, and start new colonies in the liver, lungs, bones, brain. Modern oncology is genuinely excellent at the primary tumor. Surgery removes it, radiation shrinks it, targeted drugs knock it back. Early-stage localized breast cancer now has a 5-year survival rate around 99%. That's a real hard-won triumph. The floor drops out once cells have already spread. Stage 4 breast cancer's 5-year survival falls to roughly 30%. Pancreatic cancer at that stage sits around 3%. Nothing in the current toolkit reliably mops up cells scattered across an entire body. You can't operate on 20 organs at once, and the chemo dose needed to reach every microscopic colony would kill the patient long before it killed the cancer. Then there's dormancy. Cells that go metabolically quiet, invisible to scans, invisible to drugs that only target actively dividing cells, sometimes for decades. This is why someone treated successfully for breast cancer.
So here's the ceiling, stated plainly. We can detect cancer earlier, survive primary tumors at rates unthinkable 30 years ago, and stretch survival with metastatic disease from months into years. What we cannot do is make cancer go away the way polio went away from a vaccinated population, because cancer was never an intruder to expel. It's what your own cells do when the copying machinery, running trillions of times over decades inside a body that wants to keep living, finally makes the wrong mistake in the wrong place. Eliminating cancer entirely would mean eliminating a basic consequence of being a 37 trillion cell organism that lives long enough to accumulate the errors. And here's what should actually make you optimistic instead of defeated. The real goal was never a magic cure. It's containment. Push the average age of cancer death past the average age of every other cause of death. Turn it into something managed, like high blood pressure, not something feared, like a death sentence. And on that front, the record is genuinely strong. Childhood leukemia went from a near certain death sentence to over 90% survivable. HPV-driven cervical cancer can now be functionally prevented in vaccinated populations for the first time in human history. CAR T therapy has pulled patients back from blood cancers that had no other options left. None of that is the cure that was sold in 1971, but decades of life have been added to people who would have had none.
Cancer is the price of being made of trillions of dividing cells, paid in installments, accelerated by age, and rewritten every time we fight back. There's no single breakthrough that closes that bill, because the bill is built into being alive. Every cell in your body is copying itself again, right now, with errors. The only reason you're fine is that the wrong error hasn't happened yet. If you want the rest of medicine's biggest promises put through the same test, subscribe. I break down what the headlines skip.